Hello and welcome. I'm Asuma Katauka and you are watching NewsX World. Israel claims to have destroyed radars and missile launchers in strikes on Iran, warning that foes seeking its destruction will be eliminated. While Iran vowed no limits in its response, global powers urged restraint amid escalating tensions as oil prices surged and stock markets fell on fears of a wider Middle East conflict. More than 265 people were killed when an Air India Boeing 787 crashed into a hostel in Ahmedabad, leaving just one survivor who escaped through a broken emergency exit. Prime Minister Modi visited the site while US officials ruled out grounding the 787 fleet despite this tragedy. Gulf airlines, including Qatar Airways, cancelled flights to Iran and Iraq amid Israel-Iran tensions, citing regional instability. Meanwhile, Qatar and Hamas condemned the attacks, warning they undermine diplomacy and target Iran for supporting Palestine. The UN General Assembly has passed a resolution demanding an immediate ceasefire in Gaza and urging global pressure on Israel to end its blockade and allow aid into the Strip. The EU plans to expand nuclear power to 109 gigawatt by 2050, requiring a massive investment of 241 billion euros. However, divisions between France and Germany over nuclear energy's role in meeting CO2 targets could complicate the road ahead. 8 Palestinian aid workers from the US-backed Gaza Humanitarian Foundation were killed in an ambush blamed on Hamas, amid reports of injuries and possible kidnappings, while an internet blackout has paralyzed aid operations across Gaza. Mongolia's parliament has appointed former Foreign Minister Gombojav Zandanshatar as the new prime minister following the resignation of his predecessor. The leadership change comes amid public protests over government corruption. India and China have agreed to speed up the resumption of direct flights as part of broader efforts to stabilize and improve bilateral relations. The decision came after top diplomats from both countries met in New Delhi and reaffirmed their commitment to address trade and economic differences. Israel launched a massive airstrike on Iran early today in Operation Rising Lion. The Israeli military deployed 200 fighter jets to strike around 100 sites. Targets included nuclear facilities, missile factories, and top military leaders. Prime Minister Netanyahu called the operation very successful and promised to continue until the Iranian nuclear threat is eliminated. The Israeli Defense Forces confirmed the deaths of senior Iranian figures, including Armed Forces Chief Mohammad Bagheri and Revolutionary Guards leader Hossein Salami. Over 100 Iranian drones launched towards Israel were intercepted, dozens of radars and missile launchers were destroyed. Iran condemned the attacks as a violation of international law and a declaration of war. Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi blamed the United States and promised a strong response. Supreme Leader Khamenei appointed new military leaders immediately. State TV reported civilian casualties, including women and children. At least 95 people were wounded in the strikes, according to Iranian media. Iran's key oil refineries remain undamaged. Israel targeted the underground section of Iran's Natanz nuclear facility, damaging crucial centrifuges and infrastructure. Smoke was seen after a strike on Tabriz military airport. Fresh blasts killed 3 people in East Azerbaijan. Hezbollah warned the strikes could ignite the region, but said it will not initiate an attack. Israel's Energy Minister Cohen says A state of emergency may be declared in the natural gas sector due to recent tensions. US President Donald Trump warns that the next attacks on Iran will be even more brutal and urges an end to the conflict. The latest attacks continue to escalate tensions in the region as both sides remain on high alert. Israel's Foreign Minister Gideon Sa'ar has spoken with his German and Italian counterparts, discussing recent military actions in Iran and the ongoing situation in Gaza. In his conversation with Germany's Johann Wadepool, Sa'ar defended Israel's decision to strike nuclear and military targets in Iran, emphasizing that it was a last resort measure after all other options were exhausted. He pointed to the latest IAEA reports as evidence of Iran's violations and made it clear that while challenging days lie ahead, Israel had no choice but to act. Sa'ar also addressed the ongoing Gaza conflict during a call with Italy's Foreign Minister Antonio Tajani. He reiterated Israel's desire to reach a hostage deal, but noted that Hamas has so far rejected such negotiations. According to a report by Der Spiegel, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu informed Germany's Chancellor Friedrich Merz about the attack on Iran prior to its execution. The phone call took place at approximately 2:30 a.m. CET. This alert was given in advance of the military operation as part of international diplomatic coordination. Now we stay in the Middle East. Tensions continue to escalate across the Middle East, with Jordan confirming it intercepted multiple drones and missiles today. The kingdom's military said its air defense and air force neutralized several projectiles that violated its airspace. Sirens wailed across Amman following Israel's strike on Iran, with authorities urging residents to shelter indoors. Government spokesperson Mohammed Mohammadi reaffirmed that Jordan would not allow its airspace to be violated, nor would it become a battleground for regional conflicts. The Foreign Ministry also slammed Israel's action as a blatant violation of a UN member's sovereignty. Jordan has intercepted missiles in a similar Iran-Israel escalation last October. Officials warned this latest round could push the region closer to open war. Now we move on to India. India is grieving after a devastating Air India plane crash that has killed more than 240 people. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has visited the crash site in Ahmedabad today and met injured survivors in hospital. The London-bound flight went down shortly after takeoff on Thursday, smashing into a residential area. Air India confirms there were 242 people on board, only one survived. The sole survivor, British national Vishwash Kumar Ramesh, who was in seat number 11A, is now recovering. His family says he has no idea how he made it out alive. The dead include 169 Indian nationals, 53 British nationals, 7 Portuguese, and 1 Canadian national. Grieving families are providing DNA samples to identify the victims. At least 8 others on the ground were also killed. One of the pilots, Captain Sumit Sabharwal, had over 8,000 hours of flying experience and was nearing retirement. Tributes have been pouring in from across the UK, including from families in Gloucester and Northamptonshire. Investigators are still searching for the black boxes as the cause of the crash remains unknown. Now we are joined by our reporter Anan Singh. He's a senior correspondent. He's joining us live from Ahmedabad. Anan, what is the current situation at the crash site, and can you describe what you're seeing right now? Are rescue or recovery operations still underway?
Yeah, so look, since yesterday the rescue operations have been going on, and even since morning earlier today, the rescue operations hasn't stopped, as the NDRF and SDRF, both the rescue operating agencies, they are looking for the dead bodies over there at the crash site. And even if we talk about some other developments that are taking place over here, then the dead bodies have been brought to the BJ hospital and also the civil hospital over here in Ahmedabad, and the DNA samples are being collected of all the victim families so that the identities can be ascertained, because there are a number of bodies which are beyond recognition. So clearly this is a very tough task for the forensic team over here to ascertain the identities through DNA sampling. So clearly some of the bodies have been handed over to the many families over here, as only those bodies have been handed over which can be recognized, where the faces are not burned. So clearly the administration is making all the arrangements, and they are taking all the steps to ensure that there is no hiccup in providing the mortal remains to their loved ones. So clearly, beside that, even Prime Minister Narendra Modi today visited the crash site, and he also visited the hospital over here, and he met the injured victims who were admitted in hospital, and he assured them of all the help that the Indian government will be providing to them. And even the rescue operations are still going on, whereas the only flight device recorder has been found by the agencies working here on the ground, whereas the black box is yet not found. So clearly the agencies are looking to locate the black box of the aircraft so that they can ascertain that how and why the plane went down soon after it took over within 59 seconds. Back to you.
Anand, I see you are you in hospital right now? Then what kind of medical and emergency responses have you witnessed? Are local hospital overwhelmed or coping very well?
Yeah, Suma, look, I am currently standing at the BJ hospital over here, where the DNA samples of the victim families are being collected. This is being done to ascertain the identities of the victims with their family. So clearly, this is a very hectic step that has been taken by the government. But looking at the number of victims, it's more than 250 people who have died in this crash. So clearly, it's going to take time. And the doctors, as we spoke to several of the families over here who had come to submit their DNA sample, they said that the doctors have said that it will take 3 days time to ascertain their identity. So clearly this is a very hectic situation over here, and the families who are mourning the death of their loved ones, they are still devastated with this kind of tragedy, but they don't have any other option to wait for 3 days to get the mortal remains of their loved ones. Back to you, sir.
Thank you, Anan Singh, for joining us. Your insights have been incredibly valuable to our audience. Now we have another breaking news. At least 8 aid workers from the US-backed Gaza Humanitarian Foundation were killed in a deadly ambush allegedly carried out by Hamas, intensifying the turmoil surrounding Gaza's aid efforts. The workers were en route to distribute food when their bus was riddled with gunfire, injuring many and possibly leading to kidnappings. GHF's interim director called the attack cowardly, but vowed to continue operations, distributing a record 2.6 million meals that day. Here's what one of the locals has had to say.
This draft resolution sends an unacceptable message to Hamas and other Iran-backed terrorist proxies. And that message is, you will be rewarded for taking hostages, diverting aid, and launching attacks from civilian areas. Mr. President, colleagues, blind support to Hamas by the members of this body further undermines the meaningful diplomacy underway to free the hostages and emboldens Hamas as the terrorist group continues to reject ceasefire proposals accepted by Israel.
Meanwhile, Israeli airstrikes killed over 100 Palestinians within 24 hours, with 21 deaths reported near GHF sites as Gaza reels a full internet blackout triggered by reported Israeli military activity has cut emergency communications and humanitarian coordination. Amid rising hostilities, Israel has issued new evacuation orders and intensified strikes, including near hospitals and aid zones. The UN warned of deepening hunger, slamming the current aid model as dystopian Hunger Games. Separately, the UN General Assembly overwhelmingly passed a resolution demanding an immediate and permanent ceasefire despite US opposition. The vote reflects mounting international frustration but remains non-binding. A UN two-state conference is expected next week, though the US has discouraged attendance. Let's listen into what Dorothy Shea, US representative to the United Nations, and Barbara Woodward, UK's ambassador to the United Nations, had to say in their latest conference.
This draft resolution sends an unacceptable message to Hamas and other Iran-backed terrorist proxies. And that message is, you will be rewarded for taking hostages, diverting aid, and launching attacks from civilian areas. Mr. President, colleagues, blind support to Hamas by the members of this body further undermines the meaningful diplomacy underway to free the hostages and emboldens Hamas as the terrorist group continues to reject ceasefire proposals accepted by Israel.
Israel and Hamas need to agree to an immediate and unconditional ceasefire, that Hamas must immediately and unconditionally release the hostages, and that Israel, as the occupying power, must end its blocks on aid and ensure unhindered humanitarian access. And crucially, there must be an end to any actions that stand in the way of a two-state solution and the best chance for peace for the Israeli and Palestinian people.
With over 54,000 Palestinians killed, Gaza's humanitarian crisis deepens and global calls for a solution grow louder. Now we have another breaking news. Israeli military says it continues to intercept drones launched from Iran. About 100 UAVs were sent towards Israel following airstrikes on Iran's military and nuclear sites. Israel's Air Force remains on high alert amid ongoing tensions. US President Donald Trump says he gave Iran multiple chances for a deal. He warned Iran about the US and Israel's military power, claiming top Iranian hardliners are dead. Trump calls for Iran to make peace before more destruction occurs, urging to just do it. Now we move on to our next story. Tensions remain high ahead of the G7 summit as Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky plans to urge US President Donald Trump to impose tougher sanctions on Russia. Peace talks have stalled, with Moscow refusing to halt its 3-year invasion, and only prisoner swaps agreed so far. President Trump, meanwhile, says he's disappointed in both Kyiv and Moscow for failing to reach a deal. Speaking to reporters, Trump claimed deals could have been made and lamented the continuing civilian death toll. Zelensky, however, remains hopeful. At a press conference in Kyiv, he said he plans to speak with Trump directly at the summit, pressing for a new sanctions package still pending White House approval. Let us listen in.
Як я вже і сказав, цей санкційний пакет для нас дуже важливий. Грема, Блюменталь, і ви знаєте, що ми обговорювали деталі, вони до нас приїжджали, вони дуже позитивно ставляться до цього. І ми їм за це дійсно вдячні, але все одно кінцеве рішення, воно у Білому домі, залежить від президентства. Я розраховую, що у нас буде порозмова на саміті G7. І дуже розраховую, що якщо до цього не будуть прийняті відповідні рішення, що мені вдасться мати принаймні порозуміння, наскільки ми близькі до цього рішення. Важливо, що йде координація з країнами Європейського Союзу і узгодження позицій, схожих позицій щодо пакетів санкцій. Я вважаю, що це вже
Republican Senator Lindsey Graham is also pushing a bipartisan bill calling for a massive 500% tariff on countries that continue buying Russian oil, a move aimed at nations like China and India. On the battlefield, Zelensky says Ukrainian troops are gradually pushing back Russian forces in the Sumy region. Moscow has taken more than 190 square kilometers there in under a month. Let us listen in.
Була сьогодні доповідь головкома Сирського. Фронт, передусім Покровський напрямок, Курська операція, прикордоння Сумщини. Наші підрозділи на Сумщині потроху відштовхують окупанта. Дякую вам.
And in Rome, Ukraine's foreign minister expressed hopes to end the war this year, blasting Russia for hitting civilian targets, while also criticizing nations that openly celebrated Russia's national holiday. Let's listen in.
Вони б'ють по цивільних, вони б'ють по дітях, по лікарнях. Тому цю війну треба закінчувати, і Україна до цього готова. Ми прагнемо закінчити цю війну цього року, тому так важливий тиск на агресора щодо досягнення перемир'я, яке відкриє дорогу для подальших широких перемовин.
Now we move on to North America. A mistrial has been declared in Harvey Weinstein's New York retrial on key rape charge. The jury could not reach a verdict in the case involving Jessica Mann. The judge said jury deliberations had turned hostile, with one member even threatening another. Earlier this week, Weinstein was convicted for sexual assault on Miriam Haley, but declared in the case involving Kaja Sakola. The former Hollywood mogul, now 73 years old and in a wheelchair, is already serving 16 years for a separate conviction in California. His defense team claimed jurors were influenced by other high-profile cases, including those of P. Diddy and R. Kelly, but the judge dismissed that argument. Prosecutors insist that they will seek a new trial on the Mann charge, despite defense claims it would be unfair. The jury room turmoil included accusations of intimidations, leading the foreman to refuse to continue. The case once again highlights the legacy of the Me Too movement and the fall of one of the Hollywood's most powerful figures. Now we stay in Hollywood. The federal sex trafficking trial of hip-hop mogul Sean Diddy Combs is entering a crucial stage, as cross-examination of his ex-girlfriend, identified only as Jane, wrapped up on Thursday. Combs, who is 55, has pleaded not guilty to 5 felony charges, including sex trafficking and racketeering conspiracy. Prosecutors claim he coerced women into drug-fueled sexual performances called freak-offs over a span of 2 decades. The defense admits Combs was occasionally abusive in relationships, but insists the encounters were consensual. This marks week 5 of testimony. If convicted on all counts, Combs could face life in prison. Known throughout his career as Puff Daddy and P. Diddy, Combs was a major force in American music, launching stars like Usher and Notorious B.I.G. and becoming a billionaire along the way. Now we move on to Asia. BTS fans turned Seoul purple on Friday to mark the K-pop giant's 12th anniversary, and this year the festive celebrations come with major excitement. With 6 members being discharged and 1 to be discharged on 21st June from military service, the band is poised for a massive comeback. Festa is being held in Goyang, just outside of the capital, and the city has been transformed into a giant fan zone. Even the BTS agency Hybe is wrapped in a giant slogan, "We are back." But the hype isn't just fan-driven. Analysts predict Hybe's profit could surge 150% by 2026 as BTS returns to the global stage. J-Hope is slated to perform today, Friday, and fans are hoping other members will join him for a surprise reunion on stage. This week also saw a security incident. A woman was detained outside Jungkook's luxury apartment shortly after his release from service. And with China's unofficial K-pop ban possibly lifting, the group could be set for a historic world tour with at least 3 million fans expected to attend. Now we move on to Asia. At least 20 senior Iranian commanders, including head of Revolutionary Guards Aerospace Force Hajizadeh, killed in Israeli airstrike. According to two sources, Israel Foreign Minister Saar tells France that actions against Iran will continue. Tensions escalate. Well, that's all we have time for. We will continue to bring more news updates from around the world.